awesome. I've mentioned this before, but I'll do it a little differently this time. So, I love the Rock and Roll Express, but they're the Rock and Roll Express and their grandpas. And if this company is around in a decade, like the Young Bucks are going to be 40. Mm-hmm. This is very difficult. The Heartbreak Kid, like poor Shawn Michaels in 2009, his eyes all messed up and crooked, and he starts to look like Hacksaw Jim Duggan. And, he's still the greatest, but, it's tough being the Heartbreak Kid and you get old. Whereas The Undertaker,
yes,
his gimmick is that he's dead. He's ugly.
Yes.
So, like, the older and the uglier he gets, like,
yes.
He's the greatest now, doing the stuff that he did at WrestleMania. It's the greatest. The older he gets, the better. Jake Roberts, his voice is fucking shot.
Yes.
There's been, like, a lot of smoking and
quite
drinking.
A few cigarettes and a lot of bourbon.
God only knows what else this guy's done. And it's been just about everything. His voice is fucking shot. And it's better than ever. Like, the more shot it gets, the better. Not everybody can do this, but, like, there is something to shaving your head and just growing a gray goatee when you're, like, 35. Because then you're, like, nothing ever changes.
You're that guy forever.
But it's tough being a Young Buck or a Rock and Roll Express or a Heartbreak Kid. I mean, it's fucking all downhill. But not for Jake Roberts. Jake Roberts and Undertaker, it's all uphill till they're not here anymore.
Did you happen to see the clip of Steve Austin and Ric Flair doing a word association to plug Flair's appearance on Austin's show?
No.
It's for the most part, there's nothing to it. Austin names a wrestler. Flair says something very nice about the man. And the very last one is Shawn Michaels. And Flair says, the greatest in-ring performer of all time. And Steve Austin says, I agree. And that's it.
Yeah.
It's only the two men's opinion, but two men who know a lot. Two men whose opinion is solid, based on a lot of knowledge. So we open the show. It is, apparently they're all going to be like this for several weeks. They managed to find an environment where they can have like a dozen people at ringside and the commentators and the camera crew and however many guys in the ring. The announcers this week were Tony Schiavone and Chris Jericho.
Oh, what a team.
Champion. They were a great team.
Unbelievable team.
This was the Chris Jericho show. And he took over, and I don't know if he consciously made the decision because they were in an empty arena and he felt like he had to fill a lot of dead air, but he was going. He did not take a moment off.
Well, what you could see when watching Chris Jericho is that he loved Vince McMahon's commentary around that Superstars era. Because he was playing Vince. And he was a heel Vince, obviously, but I just thought he was so good here. And you know what he's become? He has now become like a Shawn Michaels, like a Ric Flair. He's one of those guys that is now great at every aspect of this business.
Yes.
He's a great wrestler. He's a great promo. They do wacky vignettes. He's great at comedy. He's great at being serious. He's a great commentator.
Yep.
If you put a ref shirt on him, he'd probably be a great referee.
I have no doubt that if he had the inclination, he'd be a fantastic trainer.
If he had to do the gimmick where he was dressed up as a cameraman, but he had to film half the match, he'd be a great cameraman.
If he was ever in charge, I'm sure he'd be a fantastic booker.
Sure.
Yeah. I would watch a Chris Jericho promotion owned and run by Chris Jericho, staffed by dozens of Jericho clones.
Now, I realize that everybody is wrestling each other, and you can't get much closer than that. But I was mildly annoyed that they did put the wrestlers back in the crowd, but they made no effort to distance them this week.
That is true.
Everybody is practically sitting on each other.
They're shoulder to shoulder, arm to arm. Yeah.
And I mean, like I said, they are wrestling each other, so it's like, if you're going to be wrestling each other, I guess it doesn't matter if you're a foot from each other. But there were people on that show that aren't wrestling for AEW. I don't think Sugar Dunkerton is wrestling, is he? And he was out there. But I think that just, not even so much for safety, because you are all having matches with each other, but just because, everyone knows we all need to do our part. And, I go for walks outside in the fresh air, and, everyone's still, we all avoid each other by 6 feet. It's just, that's what everyone is being asked to do right now. And so I just think that, whether it matters or not, if you're running a show and you're putting the wrestlers in the crowd, just have them be 6 feet apart. It just looks better right now.
So Lance Archer wrestled a geek.
Alan Angles.
Did he have a graphic at any point?
I don't remember.
Because Jericho, at various points in this match, referred to him as Alan Angles, Alan Eagleson, and Alan Angel.
Well, that's Chris Jericho's gimmick.
Right. I don't know if any of these are actually correct. I don't know if
it's Alan Angles.
Okay. Lance Archer looked great here in this 90-second squash. He's probably done this before, but I have never seen the choke slam suplex. That was amazing. And he destroyed this man, one with a blackout. A great squash. Thumbs up. They run down the card for tonight. Britt Baker versus Hikaru Shida. Kenny Omega and Michael Nakazawa versus the Best Friends. A Jake Hager, John Moxley empty arena preview. We will hear from Damascus, Matt Hardy. And the TNT Championship Tournament begins with Cody versus Shawn Spears. So we open with Britt Baker and Hikaru Shida, and from the get-go, Chris Jericho just took over the show, and he was great. He's talking about how important it is to find the camera, how that's a lesson he learned from Jackie Crockett. Tony Schiavone is, I swear to God, struck dumb at the mention of this name. The memories come flooding back. It's like he's moved at the name of Jackie Crockett. It got to the point, and I don't even know if this is a complaint, but all I could focus on was the commentary. This match was like 20 minutes, and I was never bored, but I have almost no idea what happened because I was focusing on Jericho more than what they were doing.
Well, I was concentrating on the match.
It's fun TV, so that's a win.
First off, Sheeta's got this new video entrance. She's got this really cool reflective bodysuit.
She's had that.
And I thought that she was going to come out in it.
Yes.
But sadly, it's just the video.
Well, yeah, because Britt comes out in like a sequin jacket thing, and Jericho loves it, of course. He's between that and the boots, I think, he's compared her to Ace Frehley, which also popped Tony. And then when that video plays, and the video is just like her covered in mirrors, and Jericho's very excited, and then she does not come out wearing that, and he's very disappointed. So
they do this match, and it's a pretty good match. And at one point, I don't know if it was a running knee or what.
I think it was. It looked like a botched enziguri, and her knee caught Britt in the face.
Well, Sheeta hits Britt in the face and fucking destroys her nose.
Yes.
She's got a deviated septum, can't breathe, bleeding all over the place, and they just keep going.
They did.
And, I mean, this is an odd thing to discuss, but I mean, I was a wrestler once, and to have this happen to you in front of no fans,
yeah,
it's like, fuck.
This sucks.
Jesus. But on the bright side,
at least it's on TV.
It was on national television. It would have been much worse if this would have been like a house show in the middle of nowhere. Or
I have wrestled in front of fewer fans that were in the stands for this match and no TV.
Yes, the worst.
To break my nose, and that would have sucked.
So she kept wrestling, and she's bleeding all over the place.
She went from Ace Frehley to Gene Simmons in the same match, Jericho says.
She goes for the lockjaw, but she tries to get the referee's glove off that he's got on because she's bleeding, so she can put the glove on for the lockjaw.
Yes.
Sheeta escapes, and then finally Sheeta hits the running knee for the pin. I thought this was a very good match.
Yes. The other great part is Britt makes her, I guess, a comeback after her nose has exploded, and Jericho was encouraging her, punch her in the face, Britt, get your receipt. Because Jericho was in full-on, I'm going to entertain myself mode, and that's when things are usually the best. Speaking of the best, Kenny Omega and Michael Nakazawa are having a meeting in their trailer. And they're talking about old times. They've been best friends for a long time, but they haven't actually teamed together for 6 or 7 years since they were in DDT together. And Nakazawa says, we need a name. And Kenny says, what do you think our name should be? And Nakazawa says, well, we are best friends. We should call ourselves the Best Friends. Omega looks at him and says, we already have a best friends. They're a very popular act. And Nakazawa says, but we are best friends. You are an EVP. Change it.
It's a hell of an argument.
And Omega's like, well, we are best friends. I am an EVP. At this point, Orange Cassidy slowly, casually emerges from the bathroom in the trailer. How long has he been in there? What's he been doing in there? We don't know. But he's been in Kenny Omega's trailer's bathroom for a while. And he's heard the whole conversation. And he looks at them And he opens the trailer door. Trent and Chuck come in. They're very angry. We heard everything you said, they say. You should be ashamed. And they challenge each other, and they talk some smack, and they insist, we'll put the name on the line. If you can beat us tonight, you can be the best friends. They go back outside the trailer. Orange slowly turns and returns to the bathroom and closes the door behind him. And Kenny Omega notes, I'm getting too old for this shit. I laughed, and I laughed, and I laughed, and I laughed. This was awesome. We have the AEW rankings report. It's like they felt bad for Excalibur, who couldn't be on these shows, and so they just said, here, do the rankings. And he did a voiceover for the rankings. So here we are, for those of you taking notes on this sort of thing, which there's none of you, because they've never actually done it, I don't think, on TV before, but I will go through all the rankings in all three AEW divisions. In the tag team division, the number 5 team, the Best Friends. Number 4, the Lucha Brothers. Number 3, the former champs, SCU. Number 2 is the Young Bucks, which is kind of funny because they noted that they lost their title match, and then Nick Jackson was injured. We haven't seen him since. All right. And the number 1 team is still the Dark Order, and your champs are Kenny Omega and Hangman Page.
As far as I can tell, all that information is accurate.
Yeah. We go to the women's division. Number 5, the former champion, Riho. Number 4, Britt Baker. Had a chance to move up on this show, but she lost to a higher-ranked wrestler, so she does not move up. Number 3, Yuka Sakazaki. Number 2, the Chris Statlander. Yes, the Chris Statlander. I don't know why I said that. Number 1, Hikaru Shida, fresh off her win earlier on this show. And the champion is still Nyla Rose.
Correct.
And now we go to the men's division, where the number 5 contender is Darby Allin. The number 4 contender, one half of your World Tag Team Champions, Kenny Omega. Your number 3 contender is Cody, although he cannot challenge for this title in theory ever again. Number 2.
But you can beat him and move up in the ranks.
That's true. That's true. Number 2, dropping a spot, the former champion Chris Jericho. And your new number 1 wrestler in the AEW men's division, undefeated Jake Hager.
Yes.
Who was
as he should be.
He was set to challenge Jon Moxley. Which leads us to a Jon Moxley, Jake Hager hype video. There were 2 of these in the show. I thought the first one was way better. First of all, the very first thing Jon Moxley says, he's like under a bridge, swinging his belt around, just being Mox. The first thing he says is, me and Jake Hager are not in the business of putting smiles on people's faces. There you go. Hager notes he is a prize fighter. He does not want to be a champion for a love of the sport. He wants to be champion because he'll be paid more. We get a lot of words from Catalina Hager.
Ah, the greatest.
Jake's wife, and so much better at pro wrestling promos than Jake Hager.
How is she not? I mean, she is kind of a regular whenever he's out, but she is such a great heel.
Yes.
Like, she just...
How is she not in this business?
She's out here. She's yelling at him constantly. She's trying to get him in. She's trying to get him to work. She says, in our family, it's about winning. So if you're not going to win, don't even bother coming home.
We are a house of winners. If you don't come home a winner, don't come home.
Just the best.
And yes, we need more Catalina Hager talking on these. Moxley's talking about how he likes the feel of another man's skull being broken. And they show all the hardcore stuff he's done. There's many clips of, I should get his name, Jake's MMA coach.
Josh Rafferty.
Josh Rafferty is talking to the camera about what a badass Jake Hager is and what a monster size, speed, athlete, and great training and great fighter and vicious and aggressive. Meanwhile, in the background, Catalina is stretching Jake out in the most sexually suggestive manner possible.
Oh, yeah. Boobs right in his face.
Boobs in his face, pelvis to pelvis, hamstring stretch, all that stuff. Hager says, and I assume this is true, he had a fight planned for May 9th. It was never announced. But he has been training for this fight since February, which means he's in prime shape, and Jon Moxley is going to be hit harder than he's ever been hit before. Moxley concedes that when last time he was in the ring with Hager, he dropped him with the Paradigm Shift DDT, which has put away many, many men. Seconds later, Hager had him in that ankle lock. That's what I'm walking into, he says, but this time it's no holds barred. This was great. This was fantastic.
This is straight out of those old UFC fight night specials.
Very UFC.
I forget what they called them. UFC countdown specials. It was awesome.
It reminded me a lot of the 24/7 stuff with like De La Hoya and Mayweather too.
Yes,
which is good.
but those were 30 minutes. This was a brief segment.
This was 5, yes.
They did another one later, and yes, the first one was better because the second one was virtually the exact same thing. They just changed the wording a little bit.
It was basically the stuff that was not good enough to get into the first one.
Sure, there was no reason to have the second one. I would have liked them to have extended this one a little bit longer, put it elsewhere on the show. Second one just felt, I've seen it.
Yeah. Cody and Spears do a video package talking about the... I keep forgetting, in my mind, I'm calling it the TV Championship. That's not what it's called. This is the TNT Championship.
Sure, it is a TV title, but it is the TNT title.
Yes. And Cody says, Warner has wanted this tournament. They've wanted this championship for a long time. We're all very lucky to be in this. And Spears is talking about how there's a lot of champions in wrestling, but it's always an honor to be the first. There's not a lot of firsts left in pro wrestling. I want to be the first TNT champion.
I hope that since Warner Brothers wanted it, Michigan J. Frog is on this belt.
Oh, that would be awesome. Or just the big water tower, at least.
No, the frog.
So Cody admits
he's going to be an ongoing character on this program, Michigan J. Frog.
It is romantic that he can chase this title since he can never be world champion now. And he's talking about the last time he fought Spears, or the last angle he shot with Spears. Spears whacked him with a chair, left with a big, nasty scar on the back of his head. And as he's rubbing the scar on the back of his head, I'm looking at the scar on the front of his head from where he dived onto the ramp.
This poor fucking guy.
This dude, you're talking about giving up your body for a promotion. This is dashing Cody Rhodes, who's just ripping himself to shreds to get AEW over.
Yeah, but you know what's funny about it is, first off, the chair shot, it was a gimmicked chair. It was a shaved-down seat, so it was basically like, not quite tinfoil, but, I mean, it was a gimmick. Mm-hmm. But the problem was, the back of the chair wasn't a gimmick, and so the seat broke so easily that the back of the chair gashed the back of his head open. Yeah. So the point was, it was designed to be as safe as possible, but he ended up with this giant gash. And then the one on the front of his head, he was just supposed to do a dive, but it got screwed up, and he hit his own head on the ramp. So neither of these things, it's not like Mick Foley, who's got scars everywhere because he willingly went into a barbed wire match.
This is not Dusty Rhodes gigging himself every night.
Yes, this was two unfortunate circumstances that have disfigured this poor guy.
Yes.
Brutal.
Yes. The best friends versus the other best friends for the best friend's name.
At least there were fans in the crowd for both of those, and on national television.
Also true. So, boy, did they do a lot of comedy in this match.
Yeah, they sure did.
20 minutes of comedy.
It's too much. It's too much for me.
The thing is, we've talked about this before because booking in AEW usually makes sense. And even though Kenny Omega is one half of the tag team champions, he's still primarily a singles wrestler, whereas the best friends are a cohesive tag team. And Kenny's out here with a guy who is his best friend, but as they noted, hasn't teamed with him in half a decade or more. They were not a cohesive unit. So, it makes sense that the best friends would win this match.
Well, it's very Japanese style.
And they were not stupid enough to pin Omega.
And quite frankly, Nakazawa is the weak link.
By far.
This is every All Japan tag match for 20 years.
Part of me did want to see Kenny Omega as the best wrestler in the world. He's done a bunch of comedy. I just wanted to see suddenly for 2 minutes just whip ass and beat these guys.
Well, he kind of did in the last couple of minutes, but
a little bit. So there's baby oil spots. There's all of the wacky double teams they did in DDT, which apparently are called the Mini Skirt Police and the Hentai Slide. We have Orange Cassidy getting involved, doing stuff, and we have the one of the teams did stereo pescados to either side of the ring. Jericho first calls them twin topes, and then just very accurately calls them house show dives.
Yes.
Which is exactly what they are. It's the safest dive to do if you can do it. So there's a big comedy spot. Redundant.
I always like the high cross off the post on the 30 guys. That's my house show dive.
That's up there too. So there's Nakazawa's running wild, and he's running the ropes, and he goes to the big jumping double clothesline, and the best friends just split like the sea, and Nakazawa face plants. Jericho loses his mind, and he's trying to call spots with a straight face. He's, by his own words, still laughing at Nakazawa going for the double cliz and totally biting it. So Nakazawa pulls off pulls his underwear out of his trunk somehow, puts it onto his hand, rubs it. It goes to rub it in somebody's face. The ultimate Venom arm is what this move is called. And he accidentally rubs it in his own partner's face, and it's one of those only in pro wrestling spots where I can't stop rubbing my underwear in my partner's face. So eventually, as it keeps going, and the best friends finally pin Nakazawa with their move, and that's that.
Yeah, they worked hard at the end. If there was a crowd that was going crazy, I would be fine with it, but watching it in front of no fans, this baby oil and 69 and Claw with underwear, I was like, I can only imagine someone turning on TNT and watching this, just going, what in the fuck is this bullshit?
Yeah.
So I it's not my company, but if it were, I strongly recommend against this kind of comedy in front of no fans. Save this stuff for an arena where you're sold out well in advance and you know those people are going to eat everything up.
Especially in a 20-minute match.
This was just so weird. I couldn't take it.
We have a Brody Lee video. He drives himself up to a building, but when he gets out, there's a woman there to help him with his jacket. He walks up, and there's 3 of the nameless goofs in front of him. They're all wearing masks. He notes one of them has a wrinkled shirt. The other has a poorly tied tie, and one guy looks sharp. And he says, perception is reality. You don't look like stars. No one will look at you. Talk about walking through airports.
When you walk through an airport, you need to look like you have power and wealth.
Yeah.
And no one's going to look at you geeks that way. Mm-hmm. Of course, they're wearing masks.
Yeah. And he turns to the one who is well-dressed and says, I have an opportunity for you.
Yes.
And they leave together. I'm going to have to say it every week. I'm over this.
Well, it's going to continue.
Yeah, I'm going to be over this program as long as it's going, apparently.
I can't figure out why he's Mr. Brody and not Mr. Lee.
I don't know.
I don't think Vince tells people to call him Mr. Vince.
It's Mr. McMahon.
Yeah, it should be Mr. Lee.
Yes.
Which opens up some comedy for down the road when people want to ridicule him, only to be killed.
Britt does a promo. They said, hey, let's get a promo with you while there's still blood pouring down your face.
Yeah, the person goes, how are you feeling? Britt is aghast. I love when the wrestlers are sick of these stupid questions. I live vicariously through them.
So they also asked, did Sheeta live up to her number 1 ranking? And Britt says, no, she didn't live up to that. To be a number 1 ranked wrestler, you need to be a role model. And Sheeta is no role model. She plays dirty. She better be thankful she didn't touch my teeth. This dramatic pause. But even if she did, I could fix them myself because I'm a dentist. She walks away.
Yes.
This heel turn was the best.
This is so much better than Isaac Yankem.
Well, it's always better than Isaac Yankem. But yes, heel Britt Baker is a vast improvement.
Yes.
Here is the second Hager-Moxley thing. The only real thing I got of note out of this is that Hager, when we talked earlier about only wanting money and not caring about the love of the sport, here he had a babyface line saying he wanted to provide for the people who have sacrificed for me. Now, he did add, my wife deserves that much. So they at least set up something where she can be like henpecking him and he can be cranky about it. Oh, a kept man. And Moxley says, in our fight, there is not going to be any judges and no scorecards. The only way out is through me. You don't have a choice. And I'm going to fuck you up. We have a Matt Hardy promo.
Ah, this was the best thing. I absolutely loved it.
Do you want to take this one?
Yes, Matt Hardy says, I am here to respond to that hole in the ass, Chris Jericho. You insulted my allies, the Elite. But let's look at who you surrounded yourself with. Sammy, he's a false god, probably a fake Latino. I forget what he said. It was something like, if I said como estás, he wouldn't even know to say muy bien.
He called him a fraud Latino.
Proud and powerful, I'd rather call them loud and devourable, because I love Puerto Rican food. And then Jake Hager. He used to be smart and intelligent. Now he's totally brainwashed. A Jakenstein. Put 2 bolts in that guy's head, and the transformation is complete. He's disgusted that Jericho has tried to recruit Vanguard 1, demands Vanguard come back with the shirt, and the shirt ends up in the fire pit, I believe, and it's burnt.
Vanguard 1 shows up, and Matt is at first disappointed, but then quite pleased to see that Vanguard is carrying Matt Hardy's new AEW t-shirt available now on the website.
Yes.
And when Matt asks, where's the shirt Jericho gave you? Vanguard responds, dumpster fire, F-I-Y-A, fire. And Matt Hardy looks over, and the shirt is burning. And finally, Matt says, they shall be broken. Myself and the Elite shall delete them. And he invites Jericho to face him in the Elite Deletion.
Yes. So according to Dave, there's no guarantee there's going to be an Elite Deletion.
Okay.
Which, if that's the case,
why did you hire Matt Hardy?
This is a big check mark against AEW.
Yes.
They have always avoided setting things up that they're not going to pay off. So all I know is when this was over, as a fan, I could not have been more excited at the idea of Jericho versus Matt Hardy in the Elite Deletion, and to find out that they may not do it, I'm appalled that they put this on the air. They've got to do this. Do you understand?
I cannot imagine why you would hire Matt Hardy and not do...
Well, because they don't have Jeremy Borash, who was the one behind the final deletion.
That's a fair thing. I also cannot let this go by without noting Matt Hardy making fun of Chris Jericho for wearing leather pants in a tub that is hot.
Yes.
I don't know why it's so funny. His yoga speak, Matt does, but it's always funny. Lee Johnson versus Brody Lee.
Yes.
Brody squashes him, wins with a discus lariat.
It's Lee versus Lee.
It was, actually. And then the Spears-Cody recap video, and then Shawn Spears versus Cody in the quarterfinals of the TNT Championship Tournament. The very first match, also the quarterfinals of the TNT Championship Tournament. Jericho, not a fan of Shawn Spears' scarf-type attire, he says. So they had a perfectly fine main event match. They're working very, very hard. Cody continues to kill himself, taking bumps on the guardrails.
You know what I love about Jericho doing commentary?
A lot, but...
So they have this spot, and Spears leans a guardrail against the apron, and he gives Cody a suplex into it. And Cody is supposed to probably bend the guardrail, but the fucking guardrail is hard as a rock.
It's a guardrail, yeah.
And he fucking bangs his heels on it and falls down, and he just looks like he's in so much pain.
Yes.
And I can't tell you how many times I watch wrestling matches, and as a wrestler, I see something happen, and I think in my head, oh, his fucking heels, Jesus Christ. And of course, no announcer mentions it. Chris Jericho mentioned all of these things
that
I thought in my head as I watched these matches, because he's done this shit, and it's not WWE where, they're very, very, there's a certain way to do commentary. Even if you're there as a former wrestler, there are certain things that they want you to say, but there's clearly a lot of things they don't want you to say. Mm-hmm. Jericho tells you everything that he's thinking, and it's a lot of the stuff that I'm thinking. I was so happy when he mentioned, fuck, that guy's heels hit that fucking guardrail hard. That probably sucked.
And then he explained to the viewers at home, sometimes when you fall, too much weight falls on your heel, and you can hurt your foot.
Yes.
And running and standing and jumping hurts.
Yes.
So
Cody was really good last week, because Cody would talk about things from a wrestler's perspective.
Yes.
More shoot style, like, the headlock where
the
school
the
headlock.
grip on the headlock, yes.
Yeah, right around the guy's ears. I love that shit. And
Jericho,
I love the stuff that Jericho mentioned on this show.
Jericho, in contrast, is saying that artsy-fartsy amateur style won't get it done here in AEW. But he also, right before Cody healed himself on the guardrail, when Spears starts to move the guardrail into position, Jericho notes, for those of you asking why we have guardrails in this environment, it's so you can hit each other with them.
That was from Dave asking, why are there guardrails in an empty arena match?
Yes, it was.
He should have known better.
So Spears at one point in this match hit a pile driver, and there's something very, very weird about it, and I can't put my finger on what it was, but he grabs Cody, sticks his head between his legs, and bends over, and it was like, instead of wrapping his arms around Cody's waist, he grabbed him lower, like around the chest. It was very strange. And the announcers noticed some modified kind of pile driver, but it worked. And the match continues. So, as you noted, Sugar Dunkerton was in this crowd. And I know Sugar Dunkerton was in the crowd because he was wearing a pineapple shirt. And every time he appeared on TV for 2 hours, Chris Jericho called him Pineapple Pete. And finally, Tony Schiavone corrects him and says, that's Sugar Dunkerton. Don't correct Chris Jericho, everyone, because he's just going to insist that he is correct. That's Pineapple Pete. And then he got about 15 more Pineapple Petes in the last 10 minutes of this match. So Sugar Dunkerton got more exposure as Pineapple Pete than he's gotten as Sugar Dunkerton in his
Probably needs
career.
a new name.
It's time. It is time to be Pineapple Pete. Pineapple Pete's time has come. So Brandy gets up in the apron, almost gets hit a few times. Cody, as he's distracted by her, gets grabbed and DVD'd through a table. He fights out of that, and the match continues. Hits a pair of crossroads. Spears still kicks out. So Cody goes to the figure 4, and Spears fights and fights. He blacks out. He gets pinned. Chris Jericho claims he has never seen anyone pinned with a figure 4 before. So it's one of those things where when you are a wrestler, as much as you try to watch as much wrestling as you can to improve yourself and to know what else is being done in the business and what you can steal and what you can avoid, et cetera, you don't get to watch as much wrestling as you want to because you're working all the damn time. So Jericho apparently missed all those squash matches Ric Flair won, and a couple times against Lex Luger, pinning him with a figure 4.
Dude, not only that, but I mean, we're just talking about Vince doing commentary for WWE, and that's how Ric Flair beat Randy Savage for the title in '92.
Okay, there you go then.
Yes.
So yes, it's not, for those of you wondering, the first time a man was ever pinned with a figure 4. So that was the end of the show. So Jericho advances, and that wraps it up.
Yeah, that wraps it up, everybody. And now we have to vote, and Vinny's going to go first.
Cheap move on your part, because I am torn.
Well, I'll go first then,
Right.
because I don't give a shit. I'm scoring this a tie. I'm going to tell you why.
Yeah.
Okay? The women's ladder match was great, and although it was too long, it was a very, very good main event on the NXT show. But as far as having fun and being entertained for 2 straight hours, I mean, I should just give the win to Chris Jericho.
Basically.
As a commentator.
Yeah.
But the AEW show was just more fun to me. Like, I had fun watching that show. Whereas NXT, it was like, it's almost like an assignment. You know what I'm saying?
Yes.
It was like an assignment to watch the show and recap everything that happened.
Like, I try not to...
It wasn't bad. I mean, it was great. That's why I'm giving it a tie.
I try not to say this. I realize how spoiled it sounds, but sometimes watching these shows can be a chore. And
yes.
last week, NXT was a brutal chore.
Well, sometimes I feel like NXT is, we're just going to keep giving you these great matches. And we're going to give you these near falls. And we're going to give you these high spots.
Yes.
And we're going to give you these matches. And it can almost be draining. Like, there's only so much action in a 2-hour show that I can handle. And AEW is a much more balanced show.
Yes.
We got a promo. We got some matches. Even the comedy that I didn't like. I mean, it was nice to have a comedy break in the middle of it and just something that,
it was a different match than the other matches on the show.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah, I am with you. I'm also voting a tie. I was kind of expecting... I was on the fence leaning NXT coming into this show just because... Well, really entirely because of the main event, which I loved a lot. And then as I'm kind of going... As we recapped AEW, I realized this was like 2 hours of straight fun. AEW Dynamite, also April 15th, 2020. We open with a Jake Roberts promo, and this is already a good show.
Dude, this guy, if he had not had all of his problems... He would have been, and I mean, he is like a Hall of Famer. But
I was gonna say,
and he would have been
with his problems.
He would have been like a legitimate all-time great. His fucking promo that he cut here, every promo that he cuts, it's like his voice, his delivery, like everything about him. You just can't not watch him.
Yes,
you can't do anything else when he's talking.
You cannot take your eyes off the screen. And at no point, not for 1 second, not for 1 word, not for 1 syllable, do you not believe that he believes what he's saying.
Not only that, it's too late, and we'll see how Brody Lee does, but I watch these promos, and it's like, this fucking guy should have been the leader of the Dark Order. Because this is the kind of guy, when he talks, I believe he's recruiting fucking a giant family of followers. Like... He's the greatest talker. If he does not win Best on Interviews this year, or at least he's got to be in the top 5.
He's got I haven't seen one better. Like in a long time, in many years. So Jake says TNT would love to have Lance Archer win this TNT championship, be the front of their company.
Not just that, he thinks this belt was made for them.
He stands out. He commands attention, he says. Lance Archer's like a dog. Do you want to take a bone away from that dog? Every time he wins in this tournament, he'll get a little bit closer to what we want. implying, of course, that he wants Cody. But for tonight, he has Colt Cabana. And Jake says, I've watched Colt Cabana for years. I know what you're capable of. You got some stuff, but not near enough. And they have Lance murdering Marco Stunt last week with the voiceover of Colt Cabana, talking about how he has wrestled in Japan and seen Lance in Japan. He knows what he's capable of, and he's prepared for it. And they go back to Jake, and he just says, listen to me or regret it. It's your choice. Just awesome. Tonight on the show, Colt Cabana versus Lance Archer. Britt Baker returns to the ring. Kip Sabian versus Chuck Taylor. Sammy Guevara in action. Shawn Spears in action. And brought to you by the Inner Circle, the Bubbly Bunch.
Oh, I was so excited.
I have a Colt Cabana highlight video. And this is another one of those promos they do. It's a UFC-style promo video, which sounds funny for Colt Cabana of all people. But he just sits down and looks at the guy next to the camera, and in a very realistic, believable voice, says, I expected to be undefeated in this company. I don't think everyone in the company expected me to be undefeated. I don't think all the fans expected me to be undefeated, but I expected to be doing well here. I know Lance Archer's been dominant in Japan, but I've been dominant in Japan too. I've wrestled in Japan, China, India, Austria for 15 years. And I know Lance has come in and he's got all this hype. They've put him on a pedestal, but that's okay. I can work from underneath. I can show my work, and I can prove myself. Great. What a great babyface promo this was. So we have Colt Cabana versus Lance Archer in the first round of the TNT Championship Tournament. So every week now, Lance Archer comes storming out to his kind of emo metal theme music, and he picks a random person in the stands and just murders them.
Yes. Can't spit water on him. Got to beat him up.
Can kill them. This is why they call him the Murder Hawk Monster, because he murders people like a hawk or a monster. So, I guess in AEW, I know these, I guess storyline, their employees, they talk about how that's Anna Jay was out there this week and Jimmy Havoc was out there, whoever. So, I guess you're just allowed to kill them.
Thank God they hired Anna Jay.
There's like zero repercussions. I agree with that, by the way. Yes, that was a great news. So, they had a fun TV match. Probably a little longer than needed to go.
You know what's great about this match? Jake Roberts called it exactly how it was. Colt Cabana is very good.
Yes.
But he's not good enough.
He's very good. He has a lot of stuff.
I have bitched a 1,000 times about companies, mostly WWE, doing these tournaments that are supposed to be important, and we get like 1-minute matches in the tournament. It's like, who fucking could care? Well, Colt Cabana faced Lance Archer. It was not a squash. Colt held his own. He almost won at points. I mean, not almost won, but he did fine for himself.
Sure.
And then at the end, he just was not quite good enough, and the better man hit him with his move and won.
And Colt had a lot of good stuff, like Jake said. Colt looked really good in this match. He just wasn't good enough because Lance Archer beat him. Lance Archer, if you've never seen him wrestle, his finish is called the Blackout, where it's basically he holds the guy up over his head like a razor's edge, except the dude's facing the other way, and he flips him over onto his back and slams them down. It's a pretty elaborate move. It's kind of complicated. Somehow, he was able to hit this move out of nowhere. I still don't really know how he pulled this off.
Actually, I do, because I saw it coming. It was Colt going up to the middle rope, and as soon as he went up to that middle rope, I thought, his Blackout's coming. And he hoisted him up from there, and he got him. I don't know where I heard it or read it, but somebody was telling this story about how Lance Archer had this move, and somebody told him, I can't believe that's your finish. You can't hit that on big guys. And Lance Archer was like, I can hit that on big guys. And Colt Cabana is a big guy, and he hit it like it was nothing.
Yes. So Lance wins. He advances in the TNT tournament. Britt Baker does a promo from her dental office.
She's the best.
This heel turn was a great idea. She is there with the rules of being a role model. Apparently there's going to be a new rule every week.
I love that there's a stand with a big-ass piece of paper on it where she's writing stuff down. I'm like, I go to the dentist all the time. Why is that in there? You know what I'm saying?
I have never had the dentist draw me a diagram.
Yeah, it's like a giant diagram fucking tripod.
I never had a PowerPoint or any of those, no.
I can believe a PowerPoint or something on like a fucking screen. This is paper.
So rule number 1 of being a role model is always fight fair. And she says Hikaru Shida did not do this last week. She deliberately kicked her in the face and exploded her nose. Britt had to fight through a deviated septum, had to do it without her usual cheering dedicated fans. She did it on her own, with her own passion, her own grit, her own dedication. So really, she asks, who's the true winner here? And then, as far as I can tell, she injected herself with something.
She puts that fucking glove on and gets out the syringe. It's just classic heel stuff. Who likes the dentist?
Well, there's that. So so the main event of the show, everyone, is Jake Hager versus Jon Moxley in an empty arena match, which they've been hyping for weeks. But apparently, at the time of taping, they did not know it was going to be on this show, because I don't think they mentioned it when they ran down the card earlier. And for the first 90 minutes of the show, every time they mention it, it is very, very clumsily edited in. Plans changed, everybody. So throughout the show, we have picks on the match from various celebrities from the world of pro wrestling and fighting. Ariel Helwani is here. He picks Jake Hager in the fight.
Ariel Helwani, a long time pro wrestling fan.
Yes.
Boy, was he in his element here.
Yes, absolutely. Picking a fight between a pro fighter and a pro wrestler.
Daniel Jacob Hager Jr. will be the winner, he says.
Yes. Taz picks Moxley, but only if Moxley is able to make this a street fight and keep it out of the ring. This next segment was like a minute long, if that. It was great. It was brilliant. I want one of these every single week. It is time for Technique by Taz.
Yes.
Taz introduces for you, the viewer at home, maybe you're a pro wrestling fan, but you don't know a lot about amateur wrestling. You don't know a lot about cage fighting. You don't know a lot about submission holds, how they should properly be applied. And there's a standard disclaimer at the bottom. Do not attempt these at home. These moves can injure and or kill. So Taz goes over Jake Hager's, the arm triangle in all its various forms. And we begin with the standing version he used to defeat Dustin Rhodes, which, as Taz points out, is done with a gable grip. Then there's a sitting version where there's a figure four grip instead. Here he is in Bellator using the exact same choke from the top position. Here he has it on Moxley. When he puts it on Moxley, they close in on the grip again. It's back to the gable grip, I think. This is a deadly choke, Taz says, this arm triangle. With the strength and power Jake Hager possesses, we could be looking at a new AEW World Champion. I loved this with all my heart.
It was great. Hey, you remember when we were on the bowling team and...
Where I met my wife, yes.
Do you remember Derek?
Yes, I do, yes.
Okay. So one day...
There was only like 4 dudes, so yes.
CG also had a softball team that he was on. And one day, there was apparently a big scuffle, and to break up the scuffle, Derek grabbed this dude and put him in a fucking standing head and arm choke.
Excellent.
And he has no training in anything whatsoever. But he did the move, and he stopped the fight. So an effective maneuver even standing.
By a novice.
Yes.
I mean, to be fair, if you grab someone's head and squeeze it, most people will stop whatever they're doing.
That's true.
Yeah. Cassandra Golden versus Dr. Britt Baker, DMD. Jericho on commentary again this week. And I forgot to mention in the Cabana match, Jericho dropped a reference to Super Porky.
Yes, he did.
Much appreciated. Here, he talks about how, Cassandra Golden's out here. She's lost to Hikaru Shida. Britt Baker lost to Hikaru Shida last week. I think it was Anna Jay was in the crowd who's lost to Hikaru Shida at some point. All these women, he says, should get together, go over to Hikaru Shida, and kick her in the face. I laughed. The match is a total squash. Britt kicks her a few times and does the bit where she puts her mouth on the ropes and does the curb stomp into the ropes to break her teeth and pit her.
Yes.
More celebrity picks for the main event. Comedian Ron Funches picks Moxley. Mike Goldberg, longtime MMA announcer, picks Hager. We get a double or nothing recap. I never actually watched this show. I was there. I've never gone back and watched the actual video. There's a point in the I think it was the Young Bucks and Lucha Brothers, but Ray Phoenix
falls when Ray Phoenix lands on his fucking
top of his head and bounces up. Jesus,
brutal.
how is he alive?
I don't know.
Jesus.
That was not the only time something like that's happened to him.
Well, yeah. So, yes, they are doing Double or Nothing on May 23rd. I guess we'll see how it goes. It is time for the Bubbly Bunch.
It sure was, dude.
So, there's a Zoom call with all the guys in the inner circle. And rather than just showing 5 faces on the screen, or 6 or 7 or 8 with all the sidekicks they have,